Sancho to score. No mistakes this time.
That is a rocket.
Royce and another fantastic goal by Marco Royce. Haaland's volley is beautiful beyond compare.
Jetzt kommt das Wunder von Dortmund. Foulspiel von hinten an Götze.
Needs to lay it off. We're going to shot away. Oh, what a goal!
Welcome back to Dortmund Dispatch. I'm your host, Eli. Today I am joined by Brian. We're going to be discussing some quotes about the transfer outlook of Borussia Dortmund from Lars Ricken that came out today. Some rumors, as well as discussing what we can expect from every player in Borussia Dortmund's attack this season. We're going to be breaking down how many goals we expect from all these guys, how many minutes, who's going to be starting, stuff like that, as well as some housekeeping, as a certain potentially key player is not fit to start training that we kind of expected to be back by now. But Brian, first off, how was your weekend?
It's definitely been a busy one, but we're coming to the tail end of it, so another week ahead of us. But I'm excited to talk a little bit about the team and the attack moving forward. How's your weekend?
It's every day is getting longer. My weekend was fine. It started off very well with like the highlight, my friend's birthday party, but then kind of had a lot less going on today. But sometimes that's good.
You need the quiet days for sure.
For sure. I will be missing it tomorrow. I can tell you that. But
let's two of us.
Let's start off with this quote from Lars Ricken. Brian, I was already complaining to you before because you put in this long quote, but we'll see how I hold up over the course of this paragraph. So Lars Ricken stated, "I can partly understand that fans are impatient because, of course, every club, including us, wants to have the team as complete as possible for the start of training. But for us, it's about making the right decisions and not falling into actionism just to show people, most of whom complain anonymously on social media, that we are active. A lot of money is at stake, so things need to be prepared carefully. What's more, we don't have too few players at the moment, and yet it's quite possible that something will happen in the next few days and weeks in 2 or 3 places on the arrival side if we believe that these transfers will help us in sporting terms and make economic sense. Once again, there is a clear plan, and our sporting director, Sebastian Kehl, is currently in the middle of implementing it." How is that making you feel?
So, I mean, it kind of comes back to what we talked about last week, right? We're either in a situation where there is no plan and, people are obviously getting stressed about the fact that no one's really coming in at this point. And he's kind of mentioning that here. It's clear that they've picked up on it. They're saying they have a plan, so I want to believe that is the truth. I mean, we'll talk more about Buonanotte in a little bit, but I mean, that's been something that's been popping up a lot more in recent days as a possibility. So perhaps they do have 2 or 3 specific targets. So this is just basically half of the quote. I decided to spare you the other half, but what he did say in the other half was that they actually have identified certain players, and that 95% of the rumors that have actually come out have already come out, can't speak, were false or inaccurate. Of course he's going to say that. Of course he's going to try and keep, a level of, just like covertness about it. Like he's not going to come out and say, oh, like we 100% targeted this player. But I do think there will be movement. The one part here that I don't necessarily like is him saying that they already have enough players. I think if they do go ahead, and we spoke about this last week too, if they do go ahead and really do believe that and go through with that and just say, yeah, you know what, we have enough players to not sign anybody, we're in for a very rude awakening, especially if 1 or 2 injuries hit, especially with the amount of games that we have. So that's a little concerning to me.
I don't know why you'd be concerned about that part of it, because that really, that doesn't even, he's not even believing that. And you can tell that from the quote I just read, where he's saying there's 2 or 3 places we may make a move. It just has to make financial sense. Like, these guys, and for whatever reason, everyone knows that these teams are often going to make transfers. They still act like they're set, and they can just back out at any moment if they don't like the price they're getting. And some of that is because I think teams have to start very high or they can get taken advantage of, or you're dealing with clubs like Manchester United, where if you start really high and they're at like a reasonable price, they just go up. So teams often want to start at like a negotiating standpoint of being unreasonable in case they're dealing with idiots. So I do understand like trying to keep your cards a little bit closer to your chest and being like, oh, we could be good everywhere. And like in reality, we know that last year we went in with like one first team ready like 10. Like that's how the club felt about Gio Reyna. You could see that the last like 4 years if you look at how his career has unfolded. Like they clearly went into the season with like 1.5. They've lost one of those guys, and they've also lost some of the attackers that could cover from Mullen and Jamie Gittins. So even if you're switching to a 3-5-2, you just don't have like the same numbers in attack you had last year. You don't have the same profiles. So I do think that the club genuinely wants to make a couple moves. And even if they can replace like Gio Reyna and Chuck Wamenka and Jamie Gittins, all three of these guys with one player, like that's not the worst situation because like well, if you're cutting one position from the attack and you've added a midfielder and you still have a bunch of guys there, then you can essentially like replace some of Gittins' minutes with Joe Bellingham essentially, or someone else from the midfield, and then just bring in one guy and he can replace some of those minutes from whoever the third attacker would have been last season, and they can also replace like Gio Reyna and Carney Chukwuemeka's minutes in mid as the number 10. And so that's like fine by me. But yeah, I think that there's a lot in here where he's trying to temper expectations and hold on to his negotiating point. But I think overall, like, is there a plan? Yes. Do I trust it'll be good? No. But clearly from this quote, there's going to be business done. I think the Club World Cup for almost every club has really, really damaged and slowed down the market because you have so many clubs that kind of paused their transfer business. And a lot of those clubs that paused their transfer business are at the top of the market. And so when they don't make their transfers or when their transfers get delayed, the dominoes that fall after those transfers and make like the merry-go-round go round, those dominoes haven't fallen yet. And as soon as they fall, like Ekatike is a big one, Gyökeres is another one, that now all of a sudden a bunch of strikers are going to be on the move from all these other clubs, which is going to make other players like available, and there's just going to be a cycle of signings, I think, in the next 2 weeks that we really haven't seen yet. But also, like, we have seen a ton of money move. I think this summer is like currently on pace to set the record for the most amount of money spent. Shout out Chelsea and Liverpool.
Yeah, and Arsenal too. They've definitely made some substantial moves as well. So yeah. I mean, overall, we'll see what happens. I just feel like even if we do sign 2 or 3 additional players, like I want to say, especially with some of the exits we've had and will have likely with younger players, we're still leaving ourselves pretty thin. But maybe that's just my opinion. I feel like that's such a small squad for the amount of games that we have. So that's my main concern here.
Yeah, and I think that is a concern. Like, I would prefer that we take like the route kind of Leipzig has gone more of, where you spend money to bring in all the players you will need for the season and then sell your guys, but that's not always going to work out. And I think that, like, even if you don't do it like fully the way Leipzig has this summer, like there's just like a better way. Like I always point out, like the Schlotterbeck signing, where you agree the fee, you get the player 6 months ahead of time, and he stays at his current club. Like I think that is something that I really appreciate and like, and I think that shows the sign of like a coherent plan. But this club wasn't coherent 6 months ago, and so that makes things a little bit more difficult. And like, I'm not going to criticize the plan until it happens. And like I said before on the show, like, do I trust everything will be done well? Absolutely not. Like, I'm not being optimistic. I'm just not going to be critical until there's something that I think I can criticize. Like last season, like we started the season with one left back yet again. And I can be critical as soon as that happens, but up until like the point at which we sign a player like even Garassi, I think like is a case study of this, where last year they had this plan to win immediately, so they signed Pascal Gross and Sarah Garassi, who were two of their better players last season. But if they had simply invested into two like really strong midfielders and played Maxi Bayer up top, like they could have very easily finished fourth, in my opinion, and be set up better for long-term success. Whereas, like, I'm okay if this year ends up being kind of like a bridge year to bring in a couple new players that are going to try and win a league title in 1 or 2 years. Because, like, there was also a part of this quote that was criticized where, like, we have like, Rickon said something along the lines of we have very lofty goals, but it's not necessarily a championship. And when I looked at the Grassi signing last year, it didn't make sense to me because that's the signing you would make if you want to win a championship in the next 2 years. And I didn't think the squad was ready last year. I don't think it's ready this year. And so if we sign all players of good age profiles like U24 guys, everyone's U24, and we have like enough players to be comfortably deep in every position, I'll be fine with that, even if I don't necessarily like love our outlook for winning the title this year, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. The one thing I will say though, just in my opinion, I don't think we finish fourth if we don't sign Girassi. Like even if we signed like a competent midfield, I don't think that was enough because there was too many issues all over. And then if you don't sign Girassi, then your attack ends up being thin in one way or another. So it's like I don't know. I'm just happy that we did end up in fourth and that we do have Champions League this year. So that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I just think it more because like the goals Garassi scores, like part of that is like a style of play that's being built up essentially. And so like maybe Maxi Bayer doesn't score 30 how many other goals, non-penalty goals. Or so in the league I think he was like right at 29 or something like that, Garassi. So maybe Maxi Bayer gets like 24, which if you look at his per 90s, if he'd gotten as many minutes as Garassi, if he got all the minutes available to him, whatever, maybe he only gets 20. And I feel like that's in line with how the rest of his season went. Maybe like some other players are able to get a couple more and you're able to have like a semi-competent defense because when like instead of relying on Nemecha to play at the 6, you have a guy that's a little bit more versed in that role, like stuff like that. Like I just think that like having a more balanced midfield and having some more athletes in there can really like make your team better. And maybe we score like 5 less goals, but we concede 5 less. And I think that would have a bigger difference in our like actual point tally. But again, it's like it's not necessarily to criticize Garassi the player. It's more to criticize like the strategy of signing a 28-year-old to try and win a title when the squad clearly was not ready. But let's move over into discussing a player that could help Borussia Dortmund get back into title contention in the next couple of years, and that is Facundo Buonanotte. Concrete discussions have taken place, and the player is keen on the move, according to multiple sources. Dortmund plan to play a bit of poker regarding the move that to me makes it sound like he's maybe the second choice, and there's some guy we haven't heard of, who we maybe want a little bit more. But what do you think of this move? First, tell me if you think that my theory is correct, and then you can tell me how you feel about the player as well.
Um, I think I think he's definitely one of the top targets. I feel like you kind of saw a little bit of the same situation with Joe Bellingham as well. Like they were in negotiation with Sunderland for a while, um, and I feel like when it comes to the player himself, I do think it would be a good addition to the squad. I think he offers versatility, can play 10, can play on the wing. Actually, writing a piece for Get German Football News on him that should be coming out sometime this week. Uh, Good at set pieces, good at creating chances, can put a good cross in. Um, and I think all of that in general, like you're adding another creative outlet to this team, which I think at times you kind of saw a little bit lacking. Like, yeah, we scored like a bunch of goals through Girassi, but there were a lot of moments that I remember from this season where you had him dropping back into midfield a lot because he wasn't getting the service that he should have been getting in certain situations. Obviously, his goal tally shows that we were producing, but especially in the first half of the season, we weren't producing as much as we should have. So I feel like that will unlock a little bit for this attack. Once again, the versatility. We did lose Gittins. We're about to lose Reina to Parma, I believe, if everything should go to plan with that. So getting a very talented and versatile player to play those two roles in, I think kills two birds with one stone for this team and can be really, really helpful. So I'm excited for this to hopefully go through.
Yeah, the club, even like you and I have both been forgetting Mullen played some minutes at the start of last season, and we still haven't replaced those minutes. So even if we're going to a 3-5-2 full time, like we absolutely are desperate for an attacker just to cover the minutes. And that's whether or not Sebastian Aller stays, because Sebastian Aller, I don't think necessarily profiles well alongside Guirassy. So if you have like an injury right now to either Bayer or Adeyemi, you're very, very thin there. I don't necessarily think it needs to be a guy that's at the level of challenging those two, but like I was watching today, Bochum, because Kjell Watjen played, but I was also watching them play Leverkusen, and Leverkusen has like had signed two or three really young wingers that aren't going to be starting. Came out of like La Liga 2 last season, forgetting his name, but this guy will play a valuable squad role in that he can give them like 15 minutes a game off the bench to start the season. Hopefully by the end of the year, maybe like a spot start against the weaker team in the Champions League, or even like 30 minutes off the bench. And there's players that like RB Leipzig, I think, signed a winger in a similar mold who's like fairly inexperienced and going to be expecting to start most of the games on the bench, coming over from Ligue 1. But like I think there's a profile like that Dortmund kind of need. In addition to a 10 that can start. Because I think a 10 that can start is a little bit more important, but I think Dortmund also need that extra, like, Julian Duranville type player, but, like, I'd like to see a little bit more from them, and I just think that if you go elsewhere, you can probably find someone who's a little bit more ready to play right now.
I mean, I'd actually argue that Buonanotte, as a player, I think he.
No, I'm saying in addition to my starting 10.
Okay, gotcha.
Buonanotte is not necessarily going to start as at the 10, but I think he's at the point where, like, yes, he's not first 11, but he's definitely in that like 15 most used players for Borussia Dortmund. So soccer teams essentially have like I think 14 like first 11 players, and I think he would be one of the first guys after that that's still going to play 2,000 minutes, which is essentially to me like a regular starter. So that's where I would see Buonanotte, and like he's my 14th, 15th most used player for the season, and like depending on injuries, I'm fine with him being in the top 14 of like my basically when they're fit, they're starting, and if they're like all fit, then I'm very happy.
Yeah, and I do think that if he were to come in, he would give Brandt a run for his money at the 10 as well. Obviously, it depends on what sort of Julian Brandt we get, because it does seem like he is staying. But I do think that he does have the skill set to really push him in that position. So, and hopefully get some minutes starting in that position as well. So, but I guess we'll see. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's see the move go through first.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing a lot of players are the guy to push Julian Brandt, take him out of the starting position. And Buonanotte has done a lot more than a lot of the players I've heard that about, whether it's Gio Reyna, Carney Chukwuemeka, or even like in his last year, Marco Royce, whose minutes or his production as a starter was a little bit lower than Julian Brandt's was. I think that Julian Brandt is still going to be my first choice guy, but instead of having him be my first choice guy every second of the game he is fit for, every
that's
single
important.
game, like he's the guy he is a guy I would trust to take Julian Brandt from 3,500 minutes to 2,500 minutes. And so you might see like Julian Brandt's overall goal contributions go down this year, but if you sign Buonanotte, you might see Julian Brandt's overall goal contributions go down, but his per 90s go up, and I think that's a win for the player and the club.
No, for sure. Agreed.
Okay, next up we have another academy player. This time it's Cole Campbell, has reached a verbal agreement with Stuttgart. The player wants the move. The club would prefer a straight loan move. So Sky Sport has reported on the verbal agreement, but there are many sources that have discussed this potential transfer. So it seems the player wants the move. The club wants a straight loan. Stuttgart offered 7. The club is willing to let him leave, but at a slightly higher price. How does this make you feel?
I feel like we talked about this somewhat recently too. At the end of the day, this is an academy player. I do think he's talented. I do think, especially considering the players that have left, you can bring him in as kind of like a relief player to get some first team minutes. So it would suck to see him leave, obviously. But if we can't offer him minutes, then you can't really begrudge the player for wanting to leave. At the end of the day, he's young, he's talented, he wants to play, he wants the minutes. So, but I do think, considering where we are, especially in terms of depth, I think it'd be a little silly at this point in time, unless we did make some signings that really, you know, if you were to put those signings next to Cole Campbell and say, yeah, I'd play them ahead of Cole Campbell and this guy really wouldn't get any minutes, then yeah, let him go. But as of right now, we haven't gotten to that point. On top of that, Julian Duranville's injured. We don't know when he's going to come back. It's just kind of what I was saying earlier. You're kind of leaving yourself very thin. So.
Yeah, and if we sign Buonanotte or another guy that's primarily a 10, I don't think that means that you should necessarily get rid of Cole Campbell, because as soon as you get an injury, in my opinion, you would need him potentially off the bench in games. And like the fee, 7 million euros, like would I potentially be very happy to get like 7 to 10 million euros, retain some level of buyback or sell on clause above 25%? Like, yes, because then maybe I'm able to get a prospect I believe in a little bit more. Like, is this an academy player? Yes, but this is also a guy that came in from Iceland at 16, so it's like, it's not like he's a boyhood academy player. He did still grow up here, because those are very formative years, whether you're talking about Cole Campbell, the person, or the soccer player. Would I like to see him succeed at Borussia Dortmund? Absolutely. Do I believe he's going to be good enough for the first team this year? Maybe not. But I do think he has the potential to eventually be a first team option, whether it's as a squad player or a starter. I'd probably lean the median outcome being more towards a squad player, but like he definitely has the potential to become a first team player for Borussia Dortmund. I've said this is like the first guy where I'd start to have a little bit more of a worry if he's pushing to leave compared to some of the other academy guys we've talked about on this show leaving. Like I believe it was Tyler Miser. who left to Borussia Mönchengladbach, and I view him more as like one of your like U21 guys that's just not gonna be necessarily having a natural home at like the U23s or the U19s. I think that Cole Campbell's a little bit different because he's somewhere in between the U23s and the first team. I don't I think it might be better for his development for a loan, but if he's not going to accept a loan, then maybe you need to sell. I think that this is a very important thing, and what I really need to see from the club is to give him the vision of a 1 year loan and you return to the team in preseason next year after your successful loan spell and you join the first team ranks at Borussia Dortmund with a real role and a real opportunity. And I think that's what's been pitched to Kjell Watjen. What I need to see happen is the club do what they have been unable to do with Tom Rotha and some other guys in the past and show this guy a path into the first team, let him know that they see a future here for him and convince him to accept a straight loan for 1 year, send him to the 2 Bundesliga, find him a place where he will play regularly, and see what happens next year if he progresses, and let him know that like this Stuttgart move is not going to go away in the next couple of months, and even in like the next year, if he takes this loan move and is as good as the club believes him to be. Because even if he's not going to be ready next year after his loan move, like that, you have to let him know that that Europa League move is still going to be available for him.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like I said, once again, like I just want to make sure we're not leaving ourselves too thin, and I think that that ends up being just my one worry. But I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, if he does prove himself out on a loan, and even if he comes back, like you said, next summer, and there's no prospect for him in the first team, he'll still get a move somewhere else because he's proved himself in that loan. But yeah, once again, this is more of a let's wait and see what happens situation. I really do hope that if we do let him go, be it sale loan, whatever, that we are bringing someone in because we need those bodies in attack.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about someone who could potentially be one of those bodies. According to L'Equipe, I've seen the player linked, but the details in this specific quote, I'm going to say, are specifically from L'Equipe, but he has been linked via other sources as well. Borussia Dortmund are interested in young striker Idrissa Gueye from FC Metz. The French club is looking for a 20 million euro transfer fee. I don't think they're getting 20 mil. He is 18. He just arrived there very recently, though. But given how few minutes he has played at the senior level, I just don't think you're getting 20. But I do think he's going to end up moving from the sounds of it. Like, there's a lot of noise about a lot of different clubs being interested in him. I don't know much about the player, but I do know the academy he's from in I believe Senegal is like one of the is I think it's called Generation Foot, and it is like an elite level academy. There's so many players in Europe that have played at that academy, and it comes with a certain level of prestige. Obviously, you still have to then go into Europe, typically at a smaller league, whether that's League One or often like Norway or Denmark, and prove yourself a little bit. He's proven himself a little bit, and clubs at the higher level need to start like kind of like Borussia Dortmund going directly to the academy, getting these guys for a few $100K, because 6 months ago this guy was worth like under a mil, and now apparently he's at 20. I don't think he's gonna actually be at 20, but even then, like, this is a place you need to start looking for talent, getting ahead of the curve. They're a little bit behind the curve on this guy, but do you think that he could be a big part of the plans for the future, or do you think that this is a French source, a French selling club? What is your read on this transfer? How reliable do you think this is? Do you know anything about the player?
Probably not much more than you, to be honest. I do see here that he had, I think, 17 appearances in Ligue 2. with 5 goals and 1 assist over the course of just over 1,000 minutes. So I mean, for a player of 18, I mean, decent output, I guess. Like you said, coming from an esteemed academy, that is also another good sign. 20 mil, I think, is kind of a lot to be asking for this player. It'll also really depend what happens in the striker department for us. I don't necessarily think it makes sense for Dortmund to have all of Sebastian Haller, Serhou Guirassy, Maxi Bayer, and as on top of that, Karim Adeyemi to be able to play in all those positions, and then get this young guy, because then where is he going to play unless you're sending him back out on loan? I don't know. But if you do see a player like Aller actually leave, bringing him in makes sense, because then you do have a young player that you can kind of help build up and get those minutes in between. Because at the end of the day, if we are playing with a front two, it's going to be Girassi and one of Bayer or Adeyemi up top next to him. So
Yeah, and just to discuss a comparable fee from League Two, Eli Junior Krupi was one of like the top U21 goal scorers in all of Europe last season playing in League Two. He moved. He was reported to be moving to Chelsea for 30 million Great British pounds, which is probably around like 38-ish million euros, 35 million euros in that range. He ended up only moving for 12 million euros plus bonuses to
there
a
you go.
club that has the same owner, I believe, um, or same co-owner. I could be a little bit off there,
Mm-hmm.
but regardless, like I think that 12 million euros should set like the
Set
benchmark.
the tone, yeah, for a move
And
like
this is a
this.
guy with like a third the goals, half the minutes. So I think you should be looking at that like 10 to 15 million euro range for this guy, with bonuses, like 15 with bonuses. That's
Right,
not a base fee.
right.
That would be way too much in my opinion, for the risk you're taking.
Agreed.
Okay. Next up, we kind of talked about this a little bit already, but Gio Reyna has been linked to Parma. The player wants the move. Borussia Dortmund are holding out for 10 million euros. The move appears to be stalling.
I
I trust the club to sell. Like I feel like there were people complaining we didn't take the Jamie Gittins fee prior to the Club
right.
World Cup, and they ended up getting the fee they want. So I have no complaints about the selling powers of Sebastian Kell.
Um, I think you're looking at a little bit of a different situation though. With Gittins, you actually have coming off of quite a solid season. Girena has had little to no impact, and his overall value, just transfer value, meaning, has been tanking. So I mean, I think you are like, if they're offering 8 from what I've heard, and then you're holding out for the 10. I don't necessarily believe, and once again, I say this without fully knowing Parma's financials, but I feel like you are trying to kind of put them between a rock and a hard place, and you are also kind of putting the player in that situation too. At the end of the day, I want to see Giorena do well. It's not going to be at Dortmund, so I'd be happy to see him go for the 8. If they can manage to squeeze out the 10, great. But if you're telling me that this deal is stalling, and once again, this is speculation, so we don't know. But if it is actually stalling and this player ends up not moving and he's still in our books by the end of the summer, that's a failure to me. So,
Yeah, I just think like a better comparison might have been like Nicholas Fulkrug, who had a significantly worse season for Dortmund than he did in his last at Werder Bremen. He still got sold for a good fee. So I believe if Sebastian Kehl thinks he can get 10, I think he can get 10, and I don't think there's any way Gio Reyna starts the season with Borussia Dortmund like by match week 1. I think he will be at a different club
maybe.
for 7 to 10 million euros.
Yeah, well, once again, another we gotta wait and see.
Yeah.
So let's wait and see.
Okay, and the last thing we do before we get into our player profiles and projections is Emre Can is still not fit, but he did complete part of his performance diagnostics. I don't know how much we need to talk about that, if anything.
No, I mean, it sucks that we have one less fit body there that could play both in center defensive mid and in the defense overall. Because I mean, you do want to make sure you have a fit squad, but also on the other side, I wasn't really hoping to see Emre Can start an extensive amount of minutes at this point. I think at his age and what he's shown, I think he can do quite well as kind of a relief player or as depth. But I don't necessarily see him starting. So, I mean, if we had Schlotterbeck and a few other players fully fit, then it's not as concerning. But just because we do have some key players out, we want to make sure we have the depth. So that in that sense is a little concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if anything, all this is going to do is put on a lot of pressure onto Sebastian Kale to bring in a center back before the
Right.
season starts. If they don't genuinely believe that Elias Benkara is going to be ready to make the match day squad on week 1,
Right.
because
No, 100%.
those are your options. That's the youth player who you may remember from last preseason. He scored a goal against the third division side, and he had a very good U19 Bundesliga campaign, mainly in his age 17 season, which is very surprising for a center back. A guy that really broke out last season in preseason, was pinging the ball around the park a little bit as well, and did travel with the Club World Cup squad, but he's still a teenager.
Yeah.
He was not able to legally drink while he was in the United States. So that's like your fourth guy on the depth chart if you're not a Filippo Mane guy, and with the amount of minutes he played last season, I don't know who is. But those are the guys, and one of them could
If you don't
be,
sign somebody, yeah.
yeah, if we don't sign a guy, which I think would surprise me, but this is again just all pointing towards the evidence that there are players they want to sign. But next, we'll start with our first player profile and projection, and we're going to start with Kareem Adeyemi. So I believe he set his Borussia Dortmund best for minutes with about 2,000. He had his highest amount of goal contributions, including 13 goal contributions in the league, 2 better than he was in his first season, and oh my god, I'm doing math. 9 better than he had last season in the league. In the Champions League, he added a bunch as well. So if you look at it in all competitions, this is a guy who genuinely was pretty much carrying the attack. He added 2 assists in the Club World Cup. So if you look at him in all competitions last year, 21 goals and assists.
And that's what we expect from Kareem at this point. You know, at the end of the day, he's been here multiple seasons now. This is a player that is very much embedded in the squad, and like you said, he's very much been a big part of the attack and carried it quite heavily at times last season prior to his injury, of course, under Shaheen. And then afterwards when he came back and really got rolling again under Kovac. So I mean, my expectation is he does it again. I want to see at least 20 goal and assist goal or just goal contributions. Yeah, goals and assists total next season. I think that would be a good season for him.
He is 23. I think it's supposed to be like a 15 to 30% jump is not unreasonable to expect from a player in their 23-year-old season. Excuse me, an
Right.
attacker in their 23-year-old season. So you could be looking at a guy right there that's right around 25 goal contributions. That wouldn't shock me here. I mean, that 30% number would honestly be, I'm doing math, it would be 27 or 28 goal contributions, depending on which way you round.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a guy that could really take off this season. I'm a huge believer the dribble stuff, the dribbling was very good in my opinion this past season. He was able to get to the byline at will. He was one of our best creators, and he really wasn't the best creator in terms of set defenses, but he did add some through balls. His chance creation is almost exclusively through big chances, through these little flicked through balls and getting to the byline and running in behind and playing in crosses for big chances. So what you want to see him work on is essentially a against deep blocks, doing a little bit more, getting to the byline a little bit more consistently, stuff like that. But like this guy is dribbling in the Champions League at a much higher success rate than he was even in the league. At 48.5%, I think the world average is a little bit down. So I think the like average dribble success rate in the top 5 leagues in the Champions League this year was right around 44. So he was dominating in the Champions League. You like to see players that rise to big occasions. He was only marginally below average in the league too at 42.6. And that's probably where he's facing a bit more settled defenses. So that's where you need to see him grow to get to that big goal and assist output. If I put the over-under for goal contributions from Karim Adeyemi at 26, and no, let's say 25 and a half, do you think he gets more or less goal contributions? He had 21, including the Club World Cup, in 2,300 minutes.
I mean, I would say 20 is the base, or around 20 is the base, like the bare minimum of what he should get. My assumption would be closer to 25, 26. I think that would be a solid place to put where I would expect him to go, because I would expect him to just build on the momentum that he has from last season. So
yeah, so do you have him over or under 25 and a half?
Over, I guess. 26.
I will go over as well. So we're expecting a big season out of Karim Adeyemi. Next up, we're going to be talking about Maxi Bayer. Maxi Bayer is also set to turn 23 this year, but I believe he is in his age 22 season. So exciting times for Maxi Bayer. He had a few less minutes than Karim Adeyemi, I think, overall. Or no, he actually had basically the same amount of minutes as Karim Adeyemi this past season, but maybe, I think, less starts. So he had 1,600 league minutes, 600 Champions League minutes, and then he kind of like lost out to Karim Adeyemi because, in terms of minutes, because he had only 85 minutes in the Club World Cup. He had 15 goals and assists this season. Still very solid. What are you kind of expecting from Maxi Bayer this year?
I think he'll definitely be a lot more settled, and I think, especially in Kovac's system, you saw a little bit better from him, obviously, than we did under Shaheen. It'll also depend, obviously, how many attackers we bring in. I mean, that'll obviously, really give us a better picture of how many minutes each player is going to get. But obviously, if he completely pops off, then yeah, he'll just bench them and stay in the starting 11. But if we don't sign too many players for the attack, and we are still quite thin, I expect to see a lot more minutes from him. An extension from that, I see, with the fact that him being more settled, I expect him to. I would say he had 15 this year. I would say he would also possibly hit around that 20 mark by the end of the season, 20 goals and assists combined. And that would be my hope for him. Because this is a talented player. This is a player that can play down the middle alongside Girassi. He can play out wide. And I think a lot's going to be expected of him going into this season. So I think around that 20 mark is fair.
I kind of have a little bit higher expectations for Maxi Bayer because I thought he looked, especially in the first couple of matches under Shaheen, he just looked completely lost out on the wing. So I think that my expectations is honestly over 22 goal contributions this season. So I'm expecting him to be in that 23 to 25 range. So again, staying just behind Adeyemi in terms of goal contributions. I think that the biggest concern for me is at Hoffenheim, he was at 8.33 progressive passes received per 90 in the league. In the league for Borussia Dortmund, he was at just 7. And in the Champions League, he was at 4.7. I need to see more from him in that regard. He's so good at every facet of the game. He's actually pretty good as a passer for a forward. He's very good running in the channels. And so that to me is the most important thing. I want to see Maxi Bayer get in the channels, get in behind, and just be able to take on center backs for pace in 1v1s and behind. And I think that's where he excels. I think that playing alongside Girassi this season, and Adeyemi should help him when he's on the pitch at the same time as Adeyemi. They have like a running buddy almost, and I think that works really well. And playing alongside as in a two with Guirassy, I think will suit him very well as well, because like you said before, Guirassy does like to drop off, and Maxi Bayer can exploit that when the center backs step up to press Guirassy. He can run behind. So I need to see him get on the ball more in advanced areas and running behind just a little bit more. And I think that was really limited by Nuri Sahin's like tactical instructions
100%.
rather than Maxi Bayer's actual abilities. So that's my biggest thing to look out for him. Next up, we have Julian Duranville that we're going to be talking about. A lot of guys were talking about a breakout season last year. Just 283 league minutes. Like that's not great. He had another couple hundred minutes in the 3-Liga, I believe, or another 100 minutes in the 3-Liga. I think he also got a 90 for the U19s at one point. That's not enough senior football for this guy. What are you expecting this coming season?
It's hard to know what to expect for Duranville, because it's like you see this as a talented player. When he does play, he is explosive. He's able to dribble. He's able to take on his man. He's able to create. The amount of times I've seen him run into the box and put that ball across, like it's the talent is clearly there. I think that the injuries are really what's holding him back, and that's why it's very difficult for me to say, what I expect from him, because I don't know what to expect from him in terms of minutes. Now I believe his current injury is what, like a knee injury or something like that.
I believe it's like a shoulder.
Oh, a shoulder. Okay. Well, regardless, we don't have a timeline for when he's going to be back. And just with his overall extensive injury history, because this is obviously not his first one, it's really hard to know how many minutes he'll get, and that will really hamper him, his ability to make an impact in this coming season. If he isn't able to get the minutes because he's constantly sidelined, especially when he starts to have some momentum and then he picks up some sort of injury, that especially with a young player, that's going to have an effect. So I really don't know what to expect. I think with this one, this is a bit of a wait and see, just so we can see if he can stay fit. Because if he can stay fit and in that time kind of build up some steam, build up some performances, I do think we could see a substantial increase in productivity from him. Maybe not as massive a jump as possibly earlier expected from the performances he's had and certain showings that he's had in games where those sparks of creativity were visible. But I still do think that this is a player that, if he can stay fit, can have a very solid season.
Yeah, it's substitute minutes, so it's a little skewed on the per 90s, but this is a guy that was attempting nearly 10 take-ons per 90 while he was on the pitch last year. The thing for me that I want to see is, first off, minutes, and second off, like, the end product. Because as much as you're saying, like, he's constantly in the box, he's constantly taking on his man in the box and putting balls across the box. He's putting balls across the box, but, like, wildly. Like, he needs to have an idea of where his runners are going to be, and, like, part of that comes from training and playing with these players. It was his first season with Guirassy, but also, like, those injuries are really hurting him. I think he's expected back sometime between September and October. I'd almost like him to get, like, 3 matches fully under his belt, like, even if it's just 60 minutes a match with the U23s. I know they're in the regional leagues right now, but I kind of want him to go down there and have, like, a little bit of an adjustment period and start to look like... I want him to go down there and look like an absolute superstar for, like, 3 games, and then I want to say, okay, like, you've had some struggles before. We understand that, like, you're above this level. We want to put you on the pitch so we can, like, fact check ourselves to know that you're actually as good as we think, and we think this will be good for your development, consistency. Because when he came in at 16, they said this is a senior player right now, and we haven't seen him play enough senior minutes, and they need to make sure that like they take the kitty gloves off and they say you need to prove it to us a little bit. We know you're talented. We've seen it on the Bundesliga level. Just go down here, like 3 games, force our hand immediately. Like this is not. It's not going to take a ton. We just need to. We need to see you be the player we know you are, and at that point you bring him up, let him like get 15, 30 minutes. If we are ever chasing a game or need to go late on, like this is a dynamic player, but I need to see some more end product at the top level, because last year, like Paul Venner was like the only attacker that's putting up like attacking numbers this low. And they're both like incredibly talented players. They just need to show that at the senior level, and they haven't done it yet. But I believe that both of them this year can do that. So
he just needs the time to, like I said, build up that steam, especially like once again, he's going to be rusty. So like there's really no point in just keeping him on the bench. So I 100% agree. Put him down at that level, allow him to build that confidence, allow him to build that fitness back up. And then in that time, watch him to see if he is indeed performing at that level that, like you said, forces the club's hand to bring him back in and give him minutes. I think that works for everybody in that situation. So.
Okay. And next up, we're going to be talking about Sebastian Haller. There's apparently a secret plan to have Sebastian Haller as the backup striker if necessary. He played at 2 different clubs. He did not play pretty much at all in La Liga. And then he got a second loan move into the Eredivisie with Utrecht. He made 15 starts in 16 matches, scoring 4 goals and adding 1 assist. The expected goals, though, were a bit higher at 5.79. The shot numbers were not impressive, though, at just 2.1. He missed 8 big chances, hence the XG underperformance of 1.8. So he was getting some big chances, but did struggle at times, but he did look better as the year progressed. And so what are you expecting Sebastian Haller to stay, to go? Do you want him to stay? Let me know.
This is a tough one, because I don't know if there is a club that comes in that wants to pay his wages. I'll say that if this is Kovac's secret plan, it's not really so secret, because, I mean, this is not a new player. But on the flip side, if he really does believe that he can get a tune out of Haller, and we can't get him off the books, and like it sucks to say that, because I don't want to sound as if I'm just like, oh, just get rid of this guy, because that's not my feeling towards Haller, because obviously he went through what he went through, and he hasn't had it easy. By any means, fighting cancer and coming back and doing what he did, even having that second half of the season when he did come back, showed that there is obviously talent there, and this is a player fighting to play the best football that he can, despite the struggles that he's been through. So if Kovac really does believe that he can get a tune out of him, then great. I don't like. It's kind of like what you said earlier. I don't see him playing alongside Guirassy. This is a player that perhaps when Guirassy needs a minute, you can put him on, and then play him alongside a Bayer or Nadiemi or something like that. But yeah, I mean, there is so much talk about him possibly going to Utrecht and staying there on a permanent basis after the loan. I don't know if that's happening at this point. Doesn't seem like it. It would really suck to simply see Haller sit on the bench and not play at all. So I mean, if that's going to be the case, then I do hope he moves. Once again, if Kovac really does believe that you can get a tune out of him, then by all means, I'll trust him. I'll give him the opportunity to do so, obviously.
Yeah, so for Sebastian Haller, I think it's very much the case of if they get in another attacker they like, then I think that he goes potentially to Utrecht, potentially elsewhere. I think
Right.
Utrecht definitely has the interest. Are you going to have to pay off some of his wages? Absolutely. But, if you waive the fee, there's a lot of different ways to do it. You're basically, if you're getting a fee, you're giving it back to Sebastian Haller, and I'm okay with that, because I think that at this point, given what we saw, even in the Eredivisie, the last 5 to 6 games, were pretty good, but that's not enough for me to say to ignore the issues he's had getting on the pitch for like a relegation side in La Liga,
Right.
or even just like in the first half of his the first 3 months he was at Utrecht, he was not good.
Right.
The numbers were like really really bad, and he made it look a lot better by the end. But that's also like the league was over. Like Utrecht weren't really playing for a ton. It's just there's not enough there to make me really be interested. Like
Right.
I would love the story. No one would want the story more than me. I love Sebastian Aller. I really want to believe that there's still a player in there. I just don't know if there is, and that's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate what's happened with him, to his career, to all the difficulties he's been through, and it's him getting back to just this point. It is commendable, honestly. Um,
100%.
but yeah, I think it's honestly worth just. I think the club has the money to sign a player that like has a bit more for the team long term,
Right.
and so I think that's the direction I would move in. But next up, we're going to talk about Cole Campbell before we get to our main man. Cole Campbell last year in the second tier put up 680 minutes. He also played some minutes at the U19s and had, I think, about 100 minutes across all competitions, not even with the the first team. 2 goals, not great, not terrible. 1 assist, again, not great, not terrible. 3 goal contribution, 680 minutes. But what's gonna jump off the page to you, Brian? 5.3 successful dribbles per game at an 80% success rate in the third tier. It is the third tier, but as a dribbler, he was way above it. He is also like a more rare commodity in the senior game, like this left-footed right winger. More people are right-footed than left-footed, so that makes him a bit of a standout commodity to me. Um, but if you look at his total duels, it's 52% on 8.4. So you're talking about a guy that's very bad in the tackle, and maybe that gets a little bit better as he is a year older now, but he's still just 19. He's only 5'7". Like there's only so good he can be in that regard. But this is a guy that he's not going to necessarily be a dominant dribbler in the top flight, but off the bench he can certainly create some chaos, take his man on, and do some fun things. The end product wasn't necessarily there yet in the third tier, won't necessarily be there in the top flight, but do you think Borussia Dortmund can find him some minutes this season? And do you think he's going to end up staying or going?
I mean, it's we kind of little talked about this a little bit already, right?
Yeah.
I think with him, it'll depend on if we do bring in another player or more than one other player, and what sort of perspective the club can show him at the end of the day is like what you were saying. If they can't really show him the perspective minutes, then I do believe he is gone one way or the other, be it loan or final sale, to or permanent sale, I should say, to another club. So I mean, at the end of the day, if he were to stay, I think obviously a more rotation role more than anything. Um, but it's this is another one where it's hard to say because we really don't know where his future lies. Um, yeah, that's really all I have to say about him.
How much would you say you believe in this player?
In terms of his potential to be a starting Bundesliga player, 100%. I believe that this is a
Um,
player that
for Borussia Dortmund. And well, let me rephrase this whole question actually. Do you think Cole Campbell can be a positive contributor for Borussia Dortmund this coming season?
a positive contributor. Yes, to what extent is I guess where I would be a little bit more hesitant to say.
Okay, so I'm gonna say yes or no, or tell me when you would start getting worried if he's playing this amount of minutes. So
Okay.
if he plays like 400 minutes, are you worried yet?
No.
Are you worried if he plays 600,
No.
800,
No.
1,000.
1,000 flat, no, but past that, I think I would be, depending.
Because I think I'd start getting worried right around that. Like, if he passes 800, I'm like, I'd be a little bit like more what's gone wrong than what's gone right. But like, it could go right.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you won't know until you give him a chance, and I feel like that's what this player's looking for, a chance at the top level. And like we said earlier, I can't begrudge him the fact that he wants those minutes. So, be it with Borussia Dortmund or Stuttgart or wherever it is that he gets those minutes, I mean, I wish him the best, and I hope he can have a positive impact as long as it doesn't isn't a detriment to us. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And if Cole Campbell has a good career anywhere, I think that actually reflects very well for Borussia Dortmund, even if he's scoring goals against us, because like that 7 million fee, that's more than we got for. That's like double what we got for now. I don't want to compare it to Mukoko because the wages are so different,
Right.
but like we talked about like Paris Brunner a year ago, that would have been ahead of Cole Campbell. We held on to him for a year, better
Right.
contract situation, whatever. But 7 million's a lot more than we got for Paris Brunner.
truth.
So,
This is true.
and Paris Brunner at the time was a little bit more highly rated. So just having all these highly rated players
Right.
allows you to get more for your second-rate guys and stuff like that that you don't necessarily want to come out of your or don't want to come play for the first team out of your academy. But let's talk about the guy you've been waiting to hear about. It's Sergio Guirassy. Ryan, what are you expecting from Guirassy this season?
30 plus goals, goal contributions. Again, I think he's going to play an immense role just like he did last season. I think out of all our signings, despite maybe some initial struggles, I think he's bedded in well into the team, or probably the best out of all like the new signings of last season. I mean, and I think there's no surprise to that. I think what he showed at Stuttgart really solidified the fact that this is a top tier player. And on top of that, last season, I think, what was it, 38 goal contributions or 41 goal contributions in all competitions?
I might be very bad at math, but let's see. So we have in the league, he had 25 goals and assists. He had 17 in the Champions League, and he had 4 in the Club World Cup. If you take away penalties, you're subtracting 5 penalties in the Champions League, 9 penalties from that.
I mean, still, it's still exemplary production. I think, obviously, the best striker, in my opinion, that we've had production wise since Holland left. So, I mean, at the end of the day, with him staying and being a part of our attack, you can't expect less than the 30 plus goal contributions next season, in my opinion.
Well, it was 37 goals and assists, excluding penalties. The issue for me is the minutes. So if you include the Club World Cup, he got over 4,000 minutes this past season.
Which is a lot.
That's
definitely a lot.
That's way too many. That's
No,
like
you need a player to come in, be that Maxi buyer, somebody to take those minutes off him for sure, because you can't be putting him through the ringer like that every season. Especially as he gets older, I think that's a walking injury waiting to happen.
Yeah, and he also missed the first 4 matches of the season.
Right.
With injury. Missed all of preseason.
Absolutely. Yep.
And played 4,000 minutes. Like 4,000 minutes at his age, like this season's a bit of a worry. Like I would almost set the lot. Like if I'm going to give you a goal, an assist over under for this season, and it's going to be a lot lower than what you're going to expect, just because like the odds of him being injured it is a concern. Like it's a real concern when you play 4,000 minutes with his injury history at his age. That is a concern for me. So I very much think the club understands that as well, because you wouldn't naturally think, like you look at this team, and even I earlier in the summer, I was looking at the roster, I was like, backup striker, I don't know, like I'm fine with Maxi playing there, but like if Maxi's playing there, and Maxi's also playing as like my second striker, like I still
Possibly.
or winger even,
Yeah.
inverting forward, whatever you want to call it, like you're still going to need another guy that can kind of occupy bodies as a nine because like I'm fine to play Amy as a striker, but only if I got like a guy over 6 foot or over 6 foot to keep my center backs occupied. That's not necessarily like Max Bayer. Um, but like even him and Amy, like I'm comfortable with. We did see that in a couple games last season, and it
Work
worked
quite well.
very well. So like I'm comfortable with that with Maxi, even though I think he's only like technically 5'11". Need Pedro to give us the conversions, but like Maxi Bayer can do that. But given the 4,000 minutes, I'm more nervous now. Like it did take the Club World Cup to get there, to get to that 4,000 minute mark. So there were a couple weeks off in there, but it's still a concern for me. I really want a guy like we talked about with Julian Brandt, where I want a guy that gets Julian Brandt's like total goal contributions down. I need that for us.
I think there's also a scenario where I guess the goal contributions stay the same, but you have a bit more of an infusion of creativity into the squad that perhaps you didn't have last season. So you can balance it out. I don't necessarily think less minutes will automatically mean a substantial drop because, like, yeah, obviously playing 4,000 minutes, you have more chances to score goals or provide assists and all that stuff. But on top of that, it's kind of like what I was saying earlier. If you put a player in like Buonanotte or anybody who can create those chances, you see Girassi dropping back less and not having to be part of that midfield play as much, which frees him up to be there to score the goals, which is what he's there for. So you do also have that trade-off. So you could still see him score a substantial amount of goals or, have that production without necessarily playing the same amount of minutes. So I do think it'll depend on the overall makeup of the squad and what we're looking at for us to be able to really decide what those goal contributions are going to be. But 100%, he needs less minutes because we don't need him to get injured. Because if he does get injured, we're up Schitt's Creek, I think, in terms of that situation. So,
Yeah, I will say that one of the reasons I'd be a little bit concerned about him repeating the same amount of goal contributions is the penalties, like the Champions League penalties. That's 5 penalties in just under 1,100 minutes. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost like half a penalty every. That's like a penalty every other game almost. Not quite.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But you're over zero point 0.4 penalties per game in the Champions League. I don't necessarily know if that's sustainable. If Emre Can plays a little bit less, then maybe you get some more penalties taken. Because he took a couple off him this year. He did miss one in the league. That's not really a concern for me, because he took so many. But that would be another thing I'd be looking at in terms of like bringing down his goal total. But yeah, I think there's a lot to like in his numbers.
Right.
I mean, 37 goals and assists.
Right.
Right. So I'm gonna set the line at 29.5. Are you going over or under?
I think 29 is, yeah, I would say.
I'm excluding penalties.
I mean, I would say at 29 is a solid number at that point. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's a solid guess moving forward.
Yeah,
for
'cause,
his contributions.
He was at 29 goals alone. This past season, he did overperform his expected assists by an amount that I actually think is like pretty much in line with what Borussia Dortmund does when you have such a small sample size. Like he only overperformed it by like 1.6 in the league and Champions League. So that's like in line because Borussia Dortmund are going to overperform their XG every year. Or pretty much every year. If like the thing for me is just the fitness. It's not even necessary. Like he's going to have an injury at some point this year. He did this past year. Like he's had an injury every year. It's about how long he's out. Like we've seen him come back from these minor injuries and start scoring immediately. My concern would just be that more significant one. And the 4,000 minutes thing is that scary. That's very scary to read.
Yeah, no, 100%. Definitely shouldn't be putting through that again.
Yeah. But I think if they can manage his minutes, I think he'll be fine. So it's saying it over and under is so difficult. It's all about the minutes. I'm gonna go over to be optimistic because you never want to like expect a player to get injured, but like the amount of minutes he's played is so extreme. Like even we talked about like a 24-year-old Nico Schlotterbeck, it caught up with him, and we're talking about a guy with a worse injury history who will turn 30 this season, or at the end of the season.
Right, 100%.
So yeah,
Let's hope for the best. Let's.
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak any injuries into existence. So
I'm getting worried right now is the issue. But I think that'll do it for me. Do you have any last thoughts on Sergio Girassi?
no, I think we covered it.
Yeah, and before I want to reiterate, like I critique the transfer because it doesn't line up with like a timeline of when I think this team can contend for a title. The player's performance, like you can't really criticize it too much. Like there's a lot of penalties. There's some funny dives in there, but aside from that, like he's doing his job when he's on the pitch, and no complaints about the performance. So that'll do it for me. Brian, is there anything you want to plug aside from that GGFN article you have coming out on Buonanotte?
No, I mean, aside from that, just follow us on all our socials, Dortmund Dispatch, everywhere. Yeah, Blue Sky, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you can find us. Follow us, rate us 5 stars, and yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, so you can find me on TikTok at e.brand.thrifts. Please make sure you rate us 5 stars on Spotify. Please like on YouTube, stuff like that. We really appreciate all your support.
Absolutely.
Thank you, and have a good one.
Take care, guys.